While feeling warmth, I realized it wasn't my husband. I wasn't expecting him back. Not like this. He stood in our doorway with his suitcase, as if this was always home. He didn't call. No message. His appearance was simple.
Calm.
Confident. A presence that fills a room without effort. It took time to recognize him. He had wider shoulders and jaw stubble. Eyes steady yet softer. Though older, I still recall the boy. My hubby moved first. He smiled loudly and easily, embracing his son. They clapped each other's backs like men do when words fail. I stood at the kitchen counter, my hands damp from fruit washing and my robe hem brushing my knees. I wasn't sure what to do. Shake his hand? Politely smile? He hugged me before I could decide, like if it were natural. The brief touch appeared benign. The heat of his skin penetrated my thin robe. It surprised me. Not the gesture, but the tiny ripple it caused under my ribs. A feeling I hadn't had in ages. According to him, employment brought him back. Changing jobs, he said. Taking time to figure things out. Staying with us. Reasonable and harmless. My spouse was thrilled to see his son again. Conversation about life, plans, and chances flowed naturally. But I couldn't resist observing how the youngster, no longer a boy, kept his gaze on me too long when my husband poured coffee. It was a gentle, polite stare that lingered and got under your skin. Not daring to name, not ignorable. I got up early the next day. It was habit, I said, but as I stood in front of the closet, fingers skimming hanging, I hesitated too long. I ignored soft sweaters and flowy shirts. Choose a fitting top. It hugged my waist just enough to show my figure below. I picked earrings. Small, fragile, a detail nobody cares about. Just me. He was already in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, barefoot, in a gray sweater as early sunshine traced his shoulders. His shower-damp hair and tiny scruff along his jaw caught the light. He added sugar to his coffee. Slow, careless. I didn't expect to see you up this early, he continued without looking at me. I spoke steadily.
Could say the same to you.
We spoke lightly, but that first long glance weighed us down. The previous night, what I pretended not to feel. The house settled in during the next few days. Work consumed my husband, late evenings on conference calls, early mornings out, and his son. He returned to the house if he'd never left. Working in the garden, fixing the back gate hinge, making coffee, and telling his father simple jokes. Nothing was amiss. Nobody would doubt it. I felt it, the hidden strain. The way my eyes followed him around. He appeared to sense it without speaking. While stirring eggs at the stove one morning, I felt the air move behind me. I knew it was him without turning. His steps were light, careful. Though he never touched me, I felt his warmth. He grabbed a cup from the shelf behind me, and I held my breath unknowingly. It smells nice. Low, he whispered. Not trusting myself to speak, I nodded. Others wouldn't have noticed. But my skin knew. Every inch of me knew. It was innocuous, I told myself. Mere closeness. Just attention after a while. I knew deep down that it wasn't the last time I'd wait for him to enter a room. The days melted together, which should have made me comfortable. It was odd how easily the house acclimated to his presence again and how he slipped into the daily routine like he had always been here. As usual, my husband's schedule was crazy. He slipped into another day after business dinners, odd-hour phone calls, and polite morning smiles. But now the house felt fuller, louder even in silence. Son strolled about rooms like a member, leaning against door frames, sharing meals without formality, and offering to help with whatever. He laughed easily, listened to my husband's stories, and nodded appropriately. On the outside, everything was normal. He drew my attention more than I should have. Seeing the curve of his forearms while he toiled in the garden, how he rolled up his sleeves without thinking, and how he pushed his hair back from his face when sweat clung to his temples. I persuaded myself these things were just ordinary home-sharing observations. Harmless. But my sight weighed me down. The opportunity arrived late afternoon. Neither planned nor intended. My spouse called to say he would work late again. Some urgent meeting, a client who needed additional care. His absence no longer startled me. Not even pretending to be disappointed. The words hardly registered. The child, no. Man recommended we go to town. Restoring the backyard terrace and planting new plants were discussed. He casually volunteered to drive between lunch bites. He suggested we look at materials, and I nodded without thinking. Ride into town was safe and uneventful. Radio music hummed faintly beneath the road. We discussed neutral topics like weather, fence condition, and minor repairs. I imagined the silent power beneath his mild, steady speech. The late afternoon sun was obscured by dark clouds when we parked outside the business. We respectfully navigated aisles of nails, wood stain, and hefty dirt bags. But when our arms accidentally touched or he came too close to point out something on a label, my chest tightened. Only on the way home did our relationship change. As we turned into a little grocery store parking lot, the rain hit the windshield hard and abrupt. Neither of us left. The rain was too heavy. The wipers matched my heartbeat, steady, rhythmic, louder than I intended. He reached forward to lower the radio volume and sat back. We were silent for a time. I felt him watching me before turning. He didn't look away when I did. Our distance was really little. A calm center console, the moment's weight pressing in from all sides. His steady, sure eyes held mine, asking, not taking, waiting. No hurry, no unexpected movement. One steady, purposeful forward lean. His soft lips on mine, a question rather than a command. I could have left. Should have. I closed the space. The kiss was slow and gentle, more like discovery than possession. His hand slid slowly to my face, caressing my jaw as if he was scared I would evaporate if he touched me too firmly. As we retreated, we didn't speak. We stayed inches apart, breathing the same tight air and listening to the rain fill the silence. I should have been mad. Should have been ashamed. But there was simply the painful sense of how long it had been since someone had touched me with that type of attention, care, patience, and barely concealed hunger. I stared at my clenched hands on my lap. Breathing stopped between my throat and chest. He didn't say sorry. Lacked explanation. He stared at me quietly, and I looked back. We drove home silently. The rain eased. The outside world was unaffected. But I knew I would never feel the same inside. Too commonplace a morning following the kiss. The sky was clear. The windows were hit by the sun. As usual, the kitchen smelled of fresh coffee. My body deceived me. I woke up early, restless, my mind still in that car, where his lips had touched mine so gently and deliberately. I partly expected him to ignore me, half was scared. However, I saw him as I crossed the tiny stone path to the garden. Calm, focused, bending over little flower beds, hands in soil, sleeves rolled past elbows. No strain was visible in his face, no trace of last night's error. Can it be named that? Seeing me, he straightened. Offers nod. Good morning, gently. His voice was courteous. Equally measured, I replied. I smiled as usual, but my throat felt thick. My fingers were clasped in my robe, hidden from him. I remained there too long watching him move a young plant and notice how his forearms clenched when he pounded down the dirt. Noticed everything. It would have been easier to look away if he showed me distress. But he didn't. He remained steady. Casual grace, like nothing had changed between us. This may have been the most perilous portion. We readily fell into this indifference act. My pulse raced whenever I saw his eyes look up from under those lashes. I wanted another look. I waited. My breath caught, and my body waited with every weight shift and forward lean. He failed to satisfy me. He was so good that I almost doubted my nighttime memory. Almost. His idea was to host dinner later that day. Casual, he said. A gift for my husband's neighbors and colleagues. He said, I'll cook, with that easy smile that relaxes everyone. It's too quiet lately. My hubby rejoiced. His son's intelligence and ability to unite were praised. He didn't notice my breast twitch at the notion of spending an evening watching him move across the kitchen and hearing him laugh between talks. I nodded and helped with the arrangements, feeling the same gut ache. Night arrived too swiftly. I dressed for company. Dark, basic outfit that balanced modesty and allure. Silk under cotton, lace that only I knew. It was pointless, I told myself. However, I spent too long fixing and refining my necklace clasp. Soft lights illuminated the house. The living room speakers played music. Something mild, unimposing. Voices blended into a pleasant background as guests laughed and spoke. At the midst of it all, he moved fluidly between the kitchen and the counter, offering drinks, plating plates, and joking with neighbors as if he had never left. He laughed at my husband's stories, poured wine for guests, and had a subtle charisma that won everyone over. Occasionally, amid movements and glances, his gaze found me, briefly,
softly.
My skin reacted like a live wire every time. It was nothing, I assured myself. Just looks. Following a time we both regretted, my body didn't believe me. Between those stares, it leaned in. He leaned into the air, thickening when he got too close. Dinner went smoothly. People laughed, plates passed, glasses poured. Then, by coincidence, his fingers touched mine under the table. It was just dish passing. Roasted vegetables, casual handoff. But his fingers lingered, suitable length. Lightly touched mine. 1 second too long. A fleeting touch anyone could have missed. Not by me.
Catching my breath.
My pulse accelerated as heat rushed to my cheeks. I told myself to retreat. I was frozen in that unnatural contact. My spouse was laughing and narrating a story across the table, staring at his neighbor. Oblivious. No one noticed, me alone. Knuckles whitening, heart racing, I clutched my chair edge under the tablecloth. Mind voice tried to argue with me, to dismiss it as a game. A harmless fling. Even an accident. But my body knew better. The body had chosen its side. I lay awake long after my husband's breathing dropped into its steady cadence beside me after the visitors left. Last glass was cleaned, and final plate dried. That moment kept replaying in my thoughts. Soft touch, heavy glance across the room, subtle burn of wanting more. It was nothing, I assured myself. I chose my underwear more carefully the next morning.
And I knew why.
It was my proposal. The offer was realistic, useful, and natural, I told myself. He had to complete some paperwork for his new job and attend unfamiliar city office appointments, but my husband was too busy to go. The choice was easy. My spouse handed over the responsibilities, almost relieved. He casually suggested you go with him over breakfast, still checking his emails. I know the procedure, less than you. I nodded before he finished. Smiled. Agreed. The weight of my eagerness fell between my ribs when I was alone in the shower. I stayed under the water longer than necessary, forehead against the tile, palms flat against the wall, hoping to calm my surge. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a city drive.
A favor. A task.
But my hands shook when I chose clothes. Informal. Less evident. Dark jeans. A silky blouse that hugged me more than others. A delicate gold chain on my collarbone. Small details. Nothing others would notice. I felt something tighten inside me when he arrived at the door with keys, waiting by the car. His hair was moist, and his shirt sleeves were pushed up to emphasize his forearm strength. Casual. Effortless. This drive started like any other. Under the radio music, windows opened gently, letting in city sounds. As usual, conversation began. Easy, harmless. About upcoming tasks. City office inefficiency frustrates. The weather. Traffic. The tone changed between the first red light and the long interstate stretch. He inquired about my bedside books. The ones I never mentioned at dinner.
Told him about them.
Humorous, embarrassed. He listened. Truly listened, not just waiting for his turn. He asked quiet, probing, thoughtful inquiries that felt too personal for a casual ride. He looked at me during one of my answers and didn't look away. Smile like that, and you appear different. He said finally, low enough for me to ignore. When genuine, I remained silent. I couldn't. The side mirror showed my cheeks rush of color after I felt the heat grow beneath my skin. I tightened my skirt with my fingers folded on my lap. City skyscrapers blurred in the afternoon light outside the window. I kept noticing how lightly he held the steering wheel, how stable his palm was on the gear shift, and how his arm rested so near to my knee that I could feel our proximity. We checked in at the office reception desk and were told there was a system issue. Appointment delayed. An hour, possibly more. Here, we can wait. Knowing his suggestion, I offered immediately. He tilted his head to suggest we find a neighboring restaurant. He chose an unpretentious bistro between two small buildings, half hidden under an overgrown tree. Small tables, plain seats, chalkboard menus, and slow-brewed coffee that smelled good. We sat at a window table with the room's other talks barely audible. He requested black coffee. I ordered tea. We didn't look at the menu. The conversation softened. Not small talk. Not precisely. Question about how I met his father, stories from his last apartment, childhood excursions. The interaction was warm and honest, like two individuals who know they're in danger but disregard the indications. I noticed I was leaning forward, elbow on table, chin on hand. He saw me tuck a wayward hair behind my ear. I noticed him look at my neck, and I let my fingers trace my throat, feeling the air between us thicken. Neither of us discussed our actions. Half thinking, I bit my lower lip and caught him staring. His eyes were deeper and more purposeful. He grabbed the dollar before I could, waving my palm away with a slight shake. The sidewalk was already thrown in lengthy shadows when the sun set. Our arms nearly touched as we silently returned to the car. He stopped me from making a pointless, safe comment about the office wait just as I started. He held me still with firm, not rough, fingers on my wrist. I looked toward him, half speaking. Instead of speaking, he kept my gaze, firm and intense, eyes locked into mine with the weight of what neither of us was saying. Maybe more than seconds passed.
Don't understand.
Finally, he whispered, "This is driving me insane." I remained silent. I couldn't. I stayed put. We didn't retreat when his hand loosened. We stood on the sidewalk with the city buzzing around us, and I felt the ground tilt slightly. The distance between us seemed enormous as he let go, and we walked back to the car. My desire for someone and my fear of how much I did it were never so strong. It was his idea, again. He stated it over breakfast in the same casual manner he offered to mend a hinge or take groceries inside. He said, leaning against the kitchen doorway with a drink, I was considering pruning the trees out back. Their control is slipping. Thought that may be an excellent day. Texts and plans kept my husband from looking up. He prepared for a weekend away. Friendship golf, late dinners, long drives, and business gossip. He grinned half-heartedly, thanked his son for the idea, and turned to me with that distracted charm. He advised you rest or hang out with him. Avoid his pressure to work. I nodded, grinned. I told myself I wasn't waiting for this, but my stomach flutter betrayed me. Morning was deliberate and slow. As the sun rose, the terrace stones warmed and the garden green vibrated. From the kitchen window, I saw him pull on work gloves and tighten them at the wrists, his arms naked under a t-shirt. Easily, confidently, he lifted the ladder, tested the shear's weight, and rolled his shoulders. And it did. One who knows and trusts his body has control, strength, and unthinking elegance. Got an excuse. I thought, water, simply giving him something to drink. But I spent too long at the faucet, gently filling the glass and watching the water arc to make the excuse more convincing. After stepping outside, the light was already warming my skin and shimmering the air. My light, cotton dress touched my knees, and the air softly tugged at it. He looked up at the entrance and smiled quickly, eyes squinting in the sun. No need. I laid the glass on the tiny table beside the ladder and said, I know. I didn't turn to leave. I watched him easily grab the shears again while I stayed with my arms crossed over my chest. His labor was mesmerizing, focused, and unhurried. The blades snapping against the branches, the cuttings falling softly. His back cloth darkened with sweat, outlining his spine. He worked in silence that didn't need to be filled, and I watched, felt something tighten inside me. He hesitated, wiping his brow with his arm, then turned toward me with slightly raised lips. You want to try? Too frightened, I laughed too quickly, shaking my head. My attire is unsuitable. His soft, careful eyes followed my body, lingering at the wind-caught hem of my dress and elevating it just enough. He steadied his attention on me. Maybe next time. I should have gone inside. I knew. But my feet stayed put, as if the earth had chosen to hold me there. He returned to the branches, but I felt the air alter, his movement halt, and his look find me more often and longer. That wasn't my imagination. It wasn't chance. He descended the ladder, removed his gloves, and threw them upon the table where the water had warmed. His muscles were exhausted, not his mind, as his breathing became heavier. He said, "Finished for today," wiping his hands on his slacks. The glass was instantly offered to him, and my fingers softly touched his as he received it. We had repeated this harmless action a dozen times, but now it contained weight, memory, and the hushed echo of that first kiss in the car. Not a drinker. He put the drink down and approached. He remarked, "You wore that dress on purpose," low and gruff.
Did you?
My lips parted and breath caught between my teeth. It wasn't denied. It wasn't necessary. Another step closed the gap between us, but not quite, leaving enough space and pause to say no.
I didn't.
I lifted my chin up and stared at him. His fingers rose slowly, delicately touching my jaw and cheek. He held, studying me, waiting, inquiring. I stayed put. His lips met mine with the same constraint and terrible gentleness as that first kiss. No uncertainty or question this time. Only the steady, intentional deepening of a long-awaited touch. Soft, steady, patient kiss. A kiss that knows what it's risking and doing. Without drawing me closer, his thumb traced my cheek curve and his other hand found my small of my back.
Not yet.
Resting and owning our space. Eventually, we parted ways without speaking. There was no apology or explanation. We only had breath and a longing too loud to ignore. He reached up again and traced my jaw with the back of his fingers, softer and more delicate than expected. Quite gently, he continued, "I want to see you again." Though I didn't respond, my eyes told him everything. I stood there long after he left, singing, trembling, and heart racing. For once, I stopped pretending I wanted it, not all at once. We never crossed a line so clearly that we could point to it and declare we lost control. A steady unraveling, a delicate erosion of our supposed borders, was more silent. Something changed between us after that second kiss that neither of us could deny. No more excuses, accidental meetings, or chance blame. If we were in the same room, one of us made sure we were. It became habit before I realized it was intentional. In the kitchen in the mornings, he would lean nonchalantly against the counter with a mug, eyeing me with dropped lashes. The garden in the afternoons, where he stayed longer than necessary to move stones and tie back branches. In the garage, where I went to hunt for anything stored, I found him waiting without waiting. These sessions no longer required words. Our chats became shorter and the intervals between sentences heavier and charged. The silences sufficed. He watched my hands move and my neck when I fixed my hair. I leaned into that look and felt its heat on my skin, so I dressed differently. I didn't realize I was doing it. A softer blouse, closer to my body, a skirt that captured my hips just right, intentionally chosen undergarments, lace, silk, that felt like a secret against my flesh. I considered it a peaceful treat for me. However, I only grabbed those bits when he was home. Also perfume, subtle.
Just barely.
Okay, enough. Enough that I saw his eyes lingering as I passed. I listened for the front door and his footsteps on the hardwood. Each time, my heart waited, hard in my chest. Not for mishap. Not fate. For him. No more waiting for opportunity. I awaited him. Every day, he suggested it again while we were alone. The garden was his suggestion for expanding the space. Might be lights, or new farside terrace planters. Drive out and see what the nursery has, he offered. Offhand, breezy tone. As expected, my husband rejected the idea. Too busy. Meetings piled up. He half apologized and returned to his laptop, scarcely moving. You two go. Your taste is excellent nonetheless. I consented before he finished. Now the drive was familiar. Our smooth discourse, skimming safe topics but always circling something deeper. I told him my favorite flowers. He listened, truly listened. The spaces between our words got longer, fuller, and heavier with everything we wouldn't name. The nursery was calm. Gravel pathways were lined with potted plants. Soft music playing far enough away to not disturb the silence. Walking side by side, Our arms could have touched if I allowed them. I didn't. Not exactly. My body leaned toward him while my mind attempted to keep motionless. He showed small garden fixtures, lighting that may cast soft path glows. I barely heard details. My focus was divided, half on words, half on body pull. Each silence seemed heavy with what we weren't saying. After returning home, my hands trembled again. It was heat, I told myself. Long afternoon, but I knew better. After dinner was done, and the house was quiet, I drank wine by the window. Outside, soft lights gleamed in the dark. His fire pit's mellow flame illuminated the garden. He was still carefully maintaining the remaining embers. As he arranged the logs, his back muscles moved under his shirt. His kneeling to fix something near the fire's base made me gasp. I stayed in the shadows of the room, watching him through the glass, one hand against the window frame and the other loosely holding my glass stem. The wine unspoiled, I wanted to visit him, wishing to cross our distance. Feeling scorching heat on my flesh, reach out and place my hand on his shoulder, slide down his arm, push my palm on his back and stay there. But I didn't. I stayed in the dark, feeling heavy and intense one in my chest, fitting it between my ribs. It reminded me of the line I had yet to pass, but no longer understood how to depart. I promised myself tomorrow. Maybe I'll find the proper time tomorrow. Tomorrow, maybe I'll quit pretending to resist. I knew the thought was false even as it raced through me, not waiting for the proper time, just waiting for him. My hubby suggested it, should have expected it. He filled his calendar with social events and weekend parties that created the illusion of a happy life. He suggested a garden lunch, a basic thing, something wonderful.
Too long since we hosted.
He offered one morning over coffee, swiping through his phone, eyeing me and his inbox. Invite some friends, girlfriends, and neighbors. Can make a day of it. He didn't await my consent. I didn't see my shoulders tensing or my quiet panic. He was already planning, identifying names, and asking his son for help setting up. He continued, smiling, "You're good at that," patting his cup. I couldn't object. No valid counterargument existed. Worse, it seemed natural and sensible.
Ideal suggestion.
Perfect stage. I agreed, chose the food, and arranged the flowers. I smiled the courteous grin that covered suffering for years and hid my chest's dread. It wasn't guest phobia, not even day dread. I feared wanting the danger too much. The morning of lunch was bright blue skies, the sun soft but warm, and the breeze light enough to stir the tablecloths but not cause trouble. Soft jazz played from the small speaker near the rear patio, floating through the open doors. The table was under the ancient oak, with flowers and vases in the center, plates neatly piled, and wine bottles cooled with condensation on their labels. Beautiful, far too lovely. An easy scene to envy. Lovely if you didn't realize how tightly I was holding myself together. Staying away from the garden, I finished the dishes in the kitchen. Even through the glass, I felt his presence. His voice sounded relaxed, soft laughing as he charmed my husband's pals. He strolled between conversations with quiet confidence, like he fit in, like nothing changed. But I couldn't look at him. I looked aside whenever he glanced at me, not because I didn't want to see him, but because it would be clear. I could sense its weight. It's hot. Every time he approached. Worse than waiting. That was knowing. Danger began in the most everyday way. My hands steady, my breath shallow, I entered the kitchen for more wine. The home was peaceful. Distance muffles outside voices. He was holding a bottle near the counter, carefully twisting it. I grabbed the corkscrew alongside him. We touched for too long. We stayed put. He looked at me, probing, waited with what we weren't saying. Music from the party outside, glasses clinking, and familiar laughing filtered in through the open window. It felt impossible to be so near, and his fingers on my skin sent a piercing current through me. His voice was low as he leaned in barely to close the separation. "You're doing this on purpose," he said, lips so near I could feel the word's breath on my cheek. The back door opened before I could answer or decide. My spouse entered happily, unaware. "Help with that?" Moments snapped. We both retreated, the space between us too large and stiff. I smiled, steadying my hands as my pulse pounded my ribcage. "No, we're fine," I said, sounding smoother than I felt. But my palms were sweaty, and my heart kept going. I kept thinking about how near we were, how easily we could have been caught, and how little that scared me. It fueled the fire. He played the afternoon game, throwing little comments between conversations, quips that seemed harmless to everyone else but hit me too hard to miss. Too long a glance held breath, a curled smile for me alone.
He knew what he was doing, as did I.
Neither of us stopped. The table thinned as the sun set behind the trees. As it cooled, guests left, shaking hands and waving goodbye. My spouse, half drunk on wine and exhausted, slumped onto the couch with the TV on and closed his eyes before the first commercial break. My hands were delicate as I stacked dishes, my mind restless. I brought them to the kitchen, the house's silence falling like fog. Again he was there, quiet, close. He touched my spectacles and steadied the stack. With our eyes locked, I let him take them and set them on the counter. Now there was no pretense.
No cuernis.
Only our strong attraction. It tightened the air with its immense tension. We were silent for a while. He watched me from the counter, head inclined slightly to the side, eyes hard and clear. He whispered, "You know this won't work. Not like this." I stayed still, throat too thick to speak. His voice lowered as he approached. "Want me to leave? Do you want that?" I couldn't talk. I couldn't lie. Just shook my head.
Once, slow.
In one motion, I answered all his questions. Chance was long gone. No more accidents or blameworthy coincidences. Whatever I justified for the stolen looks, shared silences, and proximity, they were all worn out and unable to hide what was happening, or what happened. I stopped waiting for him. I awaited him, period. I counted the moments till he entered a room, his footsteps boomed down the hallway, and his voice left the garden or garage. My body responded before my intellect could argue, my ribs fluttering, my pulse racing against my will, and my skin heating up when I realized he was close. I stopped fighting. I stopped pretending I didn't desire our electric tension, the steady rise of something I couldn't identify or manage. There was my life, the regularity, the meticulous wifehood, the meals cooked, the polite talks, the good-night kisses on my husband's cheek. Another life throbbed beneath the surface of every instant, yearning to burst through my inhibition. He fed that second life with every interaction. The slightest glance across a shared area could frighten me. A hand too close to the table, his slow smile as he saw me eyeing him from the corner of my eye. We no longer tried to disguise it, not from each other. Our game of dodging and resisting had ended. He finally spoke what we had been thinking during one of those too close times, a pause near the kitchen door as the house slept and our voices were barely audible. He whispered, "I'm not going to stop," his assurance breaking the room's silence. And I don't want to stop." There was no accusation, no rage. It's true. Simple, steady. The admission didn't scare me. It seemed possible. I believed saying it would break the spell and send me back to denial. I felt the opposite. Relief. I felt like a hidden weight had been removed from my chest. He didn't request consent. It wasn't necessary. The quiet between us answered well. I dressed differently again, but I knew why. It stopped being subconscious. It was planned. My waist-clinging gowns, silk beneath cotton, the promise-filled lace on my skin. I gently rubbed my throat with my special occasion scent. Inside my wrists, these earrings caught the light perfectly. Thin gold chain on my collarbone. Nobody established a date. No deal. I knew he would arrive. Inside the house, somewhere close enough to feel our draw tighten again. I desired readiness. Had to be. I lingered in front of the mirror longer than usual that night, adjusting my necklace and clothing. I saw my mirror stare at me, as if challenging me to name it anything else. This wasn't chance, not an accident. This was my hand, reaching, my pick. I heard the basement door softly closing as he returned from his afternoon trip. My heart raced before I could stop it. I steadied myself by pressing my hands against the cool vanity, breathing slowly. I was surprised when the words arrived from the other side of my accustomed existence. Later that evening, my husband casually suggested we go away for a few days, sounding like a store trip.
Visit my family.
Far too long. They keep asking when we'll arrive. I froze, feeling blood drain from my face before answering. We might depart this weekend, he said, ignoring my soreness. Will benefit. A change of landscape. I nodded, had to nod. I was too busy thinking to comprehend anything beyond those sentences. A couple days away, leaving here, far from him. As if the knife hadn't gone deep enough, my spouse smiled and suggested he come too. He last saw them years ago. Panic grew so swiftly, I nearly gasped. I couldn't visualize. 3 of us in a car, polite smiles, little talk, my body aching for space between glances. Quiet moments without witnesses. I couldn't imagine leaving, breaking the link between those moments, of letting my inner fire die even one day. My heart wrenched with despair at the thought of him shifting his focus. Sharp, searing jealousy blazed under my ribs. I feared losing what wasn't mine. I grinned back, accepted the trip, said everything right. Secretly, my mind screamed. I wished it continued.
Not now.
Not ever. The drive was awful. Not for length. No company fault, but due of our distance. My husband drove, and we sat in the back seat, talking casually, explaining the landscapes, and filled the silence with stories, goals, and family updates. Although I nodded and made tiny comments, my words felt as thin and meaningless as the air between us. Besides me, he was still. Too quiet. His arm lazily laying along the door, his fingers lightly drumming on his knee. He looked out the window. Controlled. Detached. If this drive were simply a drive. We felt like 2 passengers sharing a trip. But I knew better. He was exuding tension like heat. His breaths were too deliberate. Every action was calculated to prevent his skin from trembling. Our elbows nearly touched, spaced inches apart. However, the pain was worse than the distance. Every minor road bump and vehicle shake that brought us closer made my heart race. Hands clutched in lap, nails digging into my palms' sensitive flesh. Small, harsh reminder that I couldn't reach him.
Not now.
Not like this. My jaw tightened as I counted every second out the other window. His silence didn't help. His calm, cool demeanor made things worse. His posture and refusal to look at me were a language of their own. I heard it louder than words. I desired his attention. I desired his breakage. I wanted to witness his hunger, which blazed beneath my skin every minute we sat there. He didn't move. Focused. Distant. My spouse chatted. He told stories about his brother and their previous visit, smiling comfortably in the rearview mirror, occasionally checking if we were awake. Nothing caught his attention. He never did. The visit slipped by. Conversations, polite laughs, long tables, recollections, and small talk filled the space.
He contributed well.
As did I. The subsurface weight didn't lift. Every forced smile made it worse. Every second we were a breath away, yet couldn't touch. The waiting made things worse, but I realized it on the way home. I could tell by my heartbeat as the familiar streets appeared, the mansion rising ahead, silent and unassuming. My husband pulled into the driveway, sighing with relief to be home, thinking about the shower and his usual couch place. He dropped his bags at the entrance, removed his jacket, and called over his shoulder to rinse off before dinner. I nodded, barely hearing him. I watched the kitchen. I instinctively entered the room where I knew he was. He was there, waiting. No words were exchanged, not needed. As I entered, his back was to me, but he turned when he sensed me near, as if drawn by the same unfathomable pull I couldn't fight. His dark, heavy eyes met me, wide open with what we'd both been holding back. I felt I was going crazy, he whispered. Sitting next to you, acting indifferent. I couldn't reply. My body moved before my mouth. I stretched across the gap between us and forced myself against him, tugging the front of his shirt to hold me. His strong arms pulled me closer, trapping me to him as our foreheads touched, breath mingled. We didn't kiss.
Not now.
After waiting so long, we stood there, bodies intertwined, shaking. We were almost broken. They took their time as his lips touched my flesh. Warm, methodical, and lingering, They rubbed against my cheek curve. He steadied me with his thumbs on my jaw, as if he knew I may fall. A floor above us, water ran upstairs, reminding us of our location. Neither of us moved. None of us could. I felt his breath on my ear and his chest rise and fall too fast under my palms. "I can't stop," he whispered. "Don't want." Still, I said nothing. There was nothing further to say. It should suffice. Quiet, touch, shared breath. But the moment broke open. A few days later, the neighbor's genial, offhand voice over the garden fence while my husband grilled dinner. "I like how nicely your wife and son get along," he continued. "The other night, I saw them talking by the fire. They appeared to be having fun." My husband grinned, shrugged, and joked about how happy he was to have such peace at home. The words stuck to me like a hefty, sharp stone. Risk was no longer hypothetical.
Someone saw.
An outsider. I felt thrill, not dread. Sweet discovery heat hits the ill. The fall's proximity made me lean harder onto the brink. After the house stilled, I stood by the window with the lights off, watching the garden lights flicker in the dark. My husband slept on the couch, head thrown back, lips slightly open, snoring softly. Unanswered, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. I ignored him. The upstairs bathroom door creaked softly, bare feet patted against the wood floor, and a towel being adjusted rustled. I saw him in the hallway when I turned. A towel around his waist, bare chest, moist skin, hair back his face. He saw me immediately. We stayed put. I wouldn't have looked away if the house collapsed. No doubt in his eyes. Only waiting. I knew I wouldn't quit. Not even trying.
So, this was mine.
This revived me. Not ready to return it.